The legacy dinosaur companies are the ones in exchange traded funds, or sometimes huge mutual funds. In many cases, in general, a lot of them haven't really gone anywhere in a decade or 2 or 3 decades, if you can believe this. So a lot of people, I think the standard investment advice in the United States to do this or that thing doesn't always apply in other places.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. With us today is Ryan Floyd, who runs an investment fund out of Boston. Interesting where he's investing these days. Rather surprising to hear, but makes complete sense. He's in India, checking things out there, and evidently there's some great opportunities there. If you got a question for Ryan, myself, shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Ryan, it's great to have you on the show. So tell us first about you. You've been investing for a long time, running funds.
Sure. Great to be on the show, Kerry. Thanks for having me. I love your podcast. Lots of interesting guests, great breadth of information. So I've been managing this investment advisor for almost 20 years, actually. I got into the business without knowing too much about modeling. I was working on the sell side and launched this business in 2008, if you can believe it. It was a crazy time to start a financial services firm, but I think it's gone pretty well. Of course, this compliance-wise is not, an offer to buy or sell, but it's been nice being able to do this for so long. Really, we focus outside the United States primarily with an eyeball on all kinds of different countries, trying to invest in things that a lot of people aren't paying attention to.
And so what aren't they paying attention to?
Well, it's kind of, you could flip it on its side and say, what are people paying attention to? You could sort of guess like large, big American companies that have hundreds and hundreds of sell-side analysts covering them. They're always on the cover of the newspaper. People are texting to them all the time. I think what I found over my time in the market is that a lot of people don't look at small companies. And with the United States really being a big portion of investable assets globally, there's a tremendous home market bias. And you kind of couple those things together with some difficulties investing outside the country. And it means sometimes smaller, more unusual companies are the ones that folks are not really looking at. And I think I've traveled to something like 100 countries, every continent but Antarctica, turning over all kinds of stones to look for interesting opportunities.
Hey, so Antarctica, huh? Well,
maybe not 100 countries.
A lot of frozen opportunities there, huh?
Yeah, hopefully not mining companies in our lifetime with all the snow melting, but I guess so. But yeah, all the other continents, it's been a great breadth of investment experience, really.
So India, it's kind of it's always had tremendous promise, largest population in the world, but
right.
Their systems really seem to be holding it back. Their judicial system makes ours look efficient. Public services, all these things. How is it changing?
It's a good question. So I lived in Bombay or Mumbai a little less than 2 years. This was right out of college. I wanted an adventure and to do something very different from what other people were doing. This was the early 2000s. I think at the time then, and even now, the general perception of India was something like this, that the bureaucracy was not the best. And gosh, there's so many different languages and different states and regulatory systems. How does it work? But beneath all of this was it was true then and true now too, an incredibly hardworking population, a real respect for entrepreneurial spirits, many, many different companies doing all kinds of different things, a sophisticated manager, a fairly good regulatory framework. And as you said, it went from having large households to smaller households, which means a real uh, explosion in number of households, and that means people buying things like furniture and household goods and all kinds of things because they're not having many children like many parts of the world. And it's been a lot of fun having lived there. I speak a little bit of Hindi, although it's kind of faded away. But as a guy raised in suburban Baltimore, knowing a little bit of Hindi, having traveled to some 30 cities, it's a lot of fun poking around India and visiting here and there and staying in touch with the country and the capital markets. I would say, I can't really make a call in an individual country, but just in terms of demographics, in general, economic growth prospects, it's probably one of the better stories because it has a large rural population and people become more productive when they move from rural to urban areas. The funny thing, I guess, is that in the 18th and 19th century in the United States, we had similar problems with our judicial system and, believe it or not, bureaucracy, ability to do things. We still do, right? I think kind of each place has to be understood on its own terms. And in many cases, the results speak for themselves. It's neat going back and seeing giant, giant bridges and a lot more material progress. And also, honestly, warm and fuzzy things like infant mortality dropping and longer lifespans and
That's a great thing.
Women's rights and such. But no place is perfect, of course, as any human knows.
And so of course. So what do you think the greatest promise of India is here? Your most optimistic, put on your most optimistic hat. If I were talking to an AI system right now, what would it tell me?
Well, it's an interesting point. I mean, different countries have different challenges depending on their historical trade, their historical regulatory environment, who generally runs the show and why. I've found that the political system, as noisy as it is in India, is one of the most interesting in the world because it's so vibrant. It's pluralistic. It's not perfect. It's really not perfect, but people really get to vote and express their preferences across many different dimensions, classes, languages, religions. It's like a giant quilt that somehow comes together and it works. Really, the thing I find just most inspiring and encouraging is this demographic issue that the working population continues to grow and productivity increases as people move from rural to urban areas. There are other countries where you would say, well, the per capita GDP is kind of similar, but it's much more urban. It's a lot harder to drive productivity growth and income growth and GDP growth, frankly, when people are already all connected to the internet. They're all connected to, urban transportation networks. They all have high-speed internet. Not all of them, but they largely have high-speed internet. So then it's a different game. You have to be able to export much more sophisticated goods in order to grow more rapidly, which is more difficult. So I think for India to grow more rapidly economically is just lower hanging fruit. I think countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh are somewhat similar too, even though that might sound funny to an American ear. I think it's sort of real that people really do become much more productive, just like they did in the United States. It's nothing against farmers. I have ancestors who were farmers and great respect for farmers also. But when you're selling your agricultural goods on a small plot of land to one market, it's a very risky, challenging existence. And when I was living in Bombay, you could see people who were first generation people living in cities with tremendous energy and, vibrancy. They wanted so much more from life. Now that puts pressure on the political environment. That's great from an economic perspective because suddenly there are these consumers, but politically also it puts pressure on the political system because they ask more when you're not connected necessarily. You live in a far rural area, you have certain political demands, but suddenly when you're much more connected, you might ask for much more, which is great in many cases. And then that's the real test of a country is whether it can filter these increased demands in some relatively productive way without, I don't know, earthquakes. It's easier said than done, but
Yeah, well,
okay.
change comes slowly. It's come slowly to India, but once it starts, there's really nothing that can stop it, is there?
That's a good that's a good insight. I would say there are some things that can stop this kind of progress. It's not unique to India, but it goes for lots of different countries. Tremendous debt can make it very difficult. We're not anywhere near there, but when no one has a mortgage, just having a mortgage to buy some property suddenly unlocks all kinds of economic opportunity. When the reverse is the case, like maybe the United States in 2007, when everybody has two or three or four mortgages, then that could really make for a challenging decade or two. India and other, lots of other countries are nowhere near there, but that could be a risk, right? Is if everyone suddenly takes on tremendous amount of leverage instead of helping to fund your cousin's business, you're spending a decade paying down debt. Of course, governments throughout centuries and millennia can also just, I call it like own goals, or maybe like getting a safety in football, American football. And this happens more than you would think. Of course, Americans know this too, but there are hard challenges, hard decisions to make. And believe it or not, having traveled to so many different places around the world, sometimes officials don't, they don't make the right decisions, and that can be bad. At least in my experience, it doesn't happen as often as it would happen, but as maybe you would think, but certainly things can happen like this that are not so good.
Well, I've learned in my brief time on the planet, never, ever underestimate the ability of politicians to screw everything up, right?
Yeah, it's a good wise comment. Yeah, it's helpful in investing in different countries around the world where it's very important to know the political system and what's going on in different countries and have some sense of humility that different countries can operate in different ways, and they can operate in ways that maybe are different than the United States or different than one's home country. Sometimes that might be jarring or uncomfortable, but in other cases it might be humbling, I suppose, that, well, it kind of works there, even though the system is slightly different. And I have to kind of put some of my, let's call it, I don't know if bias is a word, but I have to put some of my experience on one side and understand this local culture and system on the other. And of course, you can't do that exactly. They have to interact with one another. But this is kind of the great fun of looking for investments in different parts of the world.
Fascinating times we're living in, that
It is.
you can actually learn a lot, way more than you used to be able to, and actually do your due diligence all the way on the other side of the world. So for a little piece of advice to individuals looking to invest in different places, what do you tell them?
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't have the best advice. I would say be humble and not so aggressive. I kind of worry about the world of day traders looking for this or that hot thing. And of course, this is just for informational purposes, and I'm not recommending my fund. In the United States, the world of ETFs is pretty interesting because there are lots of new companies each decade that populate them. In so many other places, believe it or not, the legacy dinosaur companies are the ones in exchange traded funds, or sometimes huge mutual funds. In many cases, in general, a lot of them haven't really gone anywhere in a decade or 2 or 3 decades, if you can believe this. So a lot of people, I think the standard investment advice in the United States to do this or that thing doesn't always apply in other places. And this makes it a little challenging. So I always say it's like to my kids, I think saving is very good. Personally, saving is a very good process, and being diversified certainly helps, but not, let's say, not with the kind of knee jerk, I must be in this place, or I must own this, or I must have this uh, type of investment. I guess for better or for worse, investing outside of the hugest markets of the world just requires a lot of discernment, let's say.
All right, I'll buy that. Hey, how do we find you? And how do we connect with you on the web there, Ryan?
Thanks for asking. My firm is Barca Capital. So the website is www.barcacapital.com. Feel free to sign up for a newsletter. And I am LinkedIn. My name is Ryan Floyd, like Pink Floyd, and the firm is Barca Capital. Feel free to reach out. I know that reference dates me now. A lot of people, I have to say Floyd Merriweather maybe for some people, because a lot of people don't know the Pink Floyd reference, but
Yeah.
feel free to reach out. And I always like book recommendations and suggestions of interesting data sets or news sources or anything like that.
All right. Hey, well, we really appreciate you coming on, Ryan.
Sounds good.
Enlightening, very interesting. If you got any questions for Ryan, myself, shoot an email to kl@kerrylutz.com. Link is in the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. We just ask, if you go there, please sign up for your free newsletter, like 75,000, actually it's over 80,000, but 75,000 subscribers. And you get a lot of interesting info that you're just never going to find anywhere else. Ryan, good luck. We'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kerry. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.